Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first installment of Money Matters, the Road to Financial Literacy, brought to you by the Authors Guild Foundation. We support authors with the legal and business aspects of writing with programming like this, open to the public. But if you're not a member of the Authors Guild, I do suggest checking out our website to learn more about contract reviews by our lawyers and other benefits that our members enjoy. So let's get started. We're here for Money Matters, where we'll be addressing a variety of financial concerns for authors, journalists, and freelance writers. And today, that's what we're talking about: Freelancer Finances. We're going to hear tips on negotiating rates, getting paid, handling your accounting, and other such things. And with that, I am very happy to introduce Erin Lowry. Erin is the author of the three-part Broke Millennial series, including Broke Millennial Takes on Investing, and Broke Millennial Talks Money, Scripts, Stories, and Advice to Navigate Awkward Financial Conversations. She's been featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and CBS Sunday Morning, CNBC, and The Rachel Ray Show. She's written for the New York Times, USA Today, and Bloomberg Opinion. And she also regularly speaks at universities and conferences all over the country. Erin, thank you so much for being our moderator today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Johnny. Hi, everyone. Wonderful to have you here. I'm very excited about this conversation. So I'm just going to dig right into everyone else's illustrious bios that we have so we can get to the juicy questions and good stuff. So first up, we have Gaby Dunn, who is a New York Times bestselling author and comedian. Gaby is the host and creator of the wonderful Bad with Money with Gaby Dunn podcast, which is in its 7th season. She's also an author of the Bad with Money book, co-author of the novels I Hate Everyone But You and the sequel Please Send Help. She also published her debut original graphic novel, Bury the Lead, which is currently being adapted into a TV series. And she's a co-host of the Just Between Us podcast. I don't know how she sleeps. Now, Paco de Leon is the author and illustrator of the forthcoming debut book, Finance for the People. She founded the Hell Yeah Group, a financial firm focused on inspiring creatives to be engaged with their personal and business finances after her own experiences in small business consulting, financial planning, and wealth management. She also runs a boutique bookkeeping agency called Hell Yeah Bookkeeping, and her work has been featured in the New York Times, New York Magazine, Vice, Refinery 29, and Business Insider. She's a co-host of the Money Diaries podcast and a co-founder of the arts-based nonprofit organization Allies in Arts. Thank you, Paco. And Paulette Perhach is an award-winning freelance writer and writing coach. She's landed work for the New York Times, Slate, Elle, Glamour, Cosmo, Marie Claire, Yoga Journal, McSweeney's. It goes on, guys. And has clients such as Kirsten Jordan and the first female cast member of The $1 Million Listing New York. As a huge Bravo fan, I was thrilled about that one. She's best known for writing the globally viral essay, A Story of a Fuck-Off Fund, and her book, Welcome to the Writer's Life, which poets and writers selected for the best books for writers. She writes about business, personal finance, and craft at welcometotherwriterslife.com, where she also offers her course, Going Pro, a freelance writer's launch pack. Thank you all so much for being here today. I'm really excited about this conversation. I'm going to kick it off with something that I feel like maybe everyone can relate to. We all make mistakes on our journeys. So what is the biggest mistake that you have made during your freelancer or self-employment career? Paulette, we'll start with you.
Yes, getting a check and thinking, here's my money. I made this money. It is for me, rather than my business has made this money and I have all these little mouths to feed, such as my operating expenses and my taxes, before I get my leftover owner's pay. Very different from taking a check directly from a client to the nearest mall.
And Paco, how about you?
I would say something along the very same lines is I never really had a pricing strategy. So full disclosure, I'm an author and I'm a writer and I do get paid to write, but that's not my main source of income. I run a bookkeeping agency, and when I first started, I was just trying to compete on price, which is the worst thing you can ever do, because once you compete on price, you have to sign a bunch of clients, do a bunch of work, and inevitably you're going to have too much work and not enough energy, and the margins are going to be slim, and the work is going to suffer, and the only clients you're then going to attract are the ones that pay very little. So you get kind of trapped in this vicious pricing, trap of not charging enough. That's for sure the most painful mistake that I've made thus far.
Gaby, what about yours?
My God, just a million of them. Never understood that taxes were being taken out. Never understood how to get anybody to pay me. Spending the money before they ever did pay me. Like just a total disaster. And I would always go back and forth between freelancing and having a full-time job, especially when I was working in media and journalism. And I had no concept what was going in or what was going out. I had no like schedule. Like I would forget that a place owed me money. Like it was just a head in the sand kind of situation for a long time.
Well, you just mentioned the, getting people to pay you part. And all of us, we were talking about this actually before, we have all at some point experienced the client ghosting us phenomenon where you're trying to get paid. So what are your recommendations for how to get money from an unresponsive editor or client? So Gaby, if you want to start with that one.
I used to just send a ton of emails and I had to sort of reframe because a lot of times I would feel embarrassed, like, oh, I'm asking so many times, like that's so embarrassing for me. But I started reframing it to be like, no, you're embarrassed. You should be embarrassed. You're not paying me. I can email you 400 times a week because you should be embarrassed. Because I never wanted to seem like I needed the money. But like, then why did you do the work? No, like they're bad. You're not bad. So I had to reframe it. But I'm thinking in particular of one client who, it's sort of it was extra egregious to me because it was a Pride campaign and they were like fully ghosting, like not paying me. And I had promoted their stuff for Pride, which we can go on and on about rainbow capitalism, but June is a very lucrative month for me. And then they just like, it took a full year for this company to pay me for a Pride campaign. And like every day I wanted to like hop on social media and just, because I feel like that's particularly egregious. But and a lot of times I have, or like I've burnt bridges in private emails. And that's a mixed bag. So sometimes it's you can take it to social media, which has been a little bit helpful, or the threat of taking it to social media, even if you don't like in the email, the sort of like, I've done the threat of taking it to social media.
It'd be a shame for my followers.
You should be ashamed.
You should be ashamed.
But I do it in I did one that was just like, it was like the end of the email and it was like a little threat where it was like, by the way, like, next time you want to use a queer person for promotion or whatever. And it was like I wasn't like, I'm going to take it to social media, but I was like, here's my spin if I do.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, what about you, Paco?
Well, when we were talking earlier, I told you guys that my very first job in the industry, the financial industry, was as a debt collector. I worked for Bank of America, the evilest bank of all. And I sat in a call center, and for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, the dialer would just beep and I'd be like, hi, Mr. Smith, you're 17 days late on your auto loan. So I feel tremendously comfortable just being kind and like being a human to another human even though we're having like a very transactional conversation. I think something special happens with people paying me. I feel like since I run a bookkeeping agency, since I'm the finance person, people tend to want to be on their best behavior with me. Like they don't want to screw me over because they're like, you don't screw over like the finance person, the bookkeeper. So I feel like I've, dodged some bullets in that regard. Can I give some tips on like how to avoid this?
Please.
Okay. So one of the things that I've had folks do is separating you, the creative person, you, the writer, you, the whatever, the maker, from the transaction, and doing that by faking the person out with a fake person in your office, like a fake assistant. So you could do like assistant at yourwebsite.com, or you could even go as far as making up a fake name like Jane, whatever, and pretend to be Jane and send your invoices from Jane and like be Jane. Maybe there's some ethical issues with that. I don't think that there are, especially if you know you're dealing with larger corporations that have power and have leverage, and you're literally just trying to do what you can so that you're getting your invoice paid, before 90 days, 90 days out. Another thing that I do is I'll use QuickBooks and I'll just use an automatic reminder. That way it doesn't feel personal. I'm not like personally like, hey, what's up? You're making this awkward. So now I got to make this awkward. We got to have this conversation because you can't pay your bill. If you just like use technology, leverage it so that it just automatically sends reminders. A lot of times people are just, they're busy. They're not thinking about your money. They're not thinking about you. And that simple reminder, I think, helps people. It just, it takes kind of the awkwardness out. So those are two things that I would do. It's tough, especially when you're dealing with larger organizations who are like, these are on my terms, we'll pay you in 60 days. See ya, good luck.
And to clarify with that reminder, you've sent the invoice via QuickBooks, and then QuickBooks automatically is like, hey, you haven't paid this. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
Exactly.
And Paulette, what about you?
So, I think this is one of the wonderful things about getting further on in your career and networking and marketing, where you can pick your clients and you can have your pick of people who treat you really well. And I've had a lot of clients who've treated me really well. Hasn't been like a terrible, terrible problem. My favorite story was when it had been 3 months and I just kept sending, to me, it's like fact-based emails like, hi, I completed this work on this date, which was now 2 months ago. I invoiced you on this date, blah, blah, blah. And then sometimes I'll just keep adding people to the email, like anyone that I dealt with. And for this one local magazine, I think it was definitely at least 3 months later, I found every email I could find from anyone who worked at this magazine, sent an email to every single person. And I said, hi, here's what happened here are the emails I've sent, which went unanswered, blah, blah, blah. So now I'm emailing every email I can find at this publication in order to settle this matter, and never expected to work for them again. Wouldn't want to, had a check in a week. And like, it was funny. I was telling someone that story at a party and they go, I got that email.
Perfect.
I was like,
that's amazing.
People did. Yeah. Cause it's just like, it's like, you should be embarrassed. Like, I want to let you guys know what kind of ship you're running, because you think about like among your colleagues at work, like it's basically being like, are you doing your job or what over there in accounts payable? Like, get on it. Let's go. So, but yeah, get rid of those clients. If someone's messing around with your money, like you're not doing them a favor. Like, get out of there, find someone else.
When speaking of our money, I think the next big anxiety point for a lot of us is obviously we want to get paid, but also having the conversation about how much to get paid. So those initial negotiations. And I want to look at this from two different perspectives. So first, Gaby, with you, when you're thinking about working with a potential client, how do you negotiate or decide how much you're going to be charging someone on that just initial, you don't have a history or a relationship with that company? How do you figure out your price point?
Sorry, the lawn people just started right now. I don't know if you can hear that. They've decided right now is the time. So a lot of times I'll go by what I've charged in the past, or often when I was first starting, I asked friends who I had seen do similar work. I just emailed friends and said, how much are you getting paid for this? And a lot of times they would say a number higher than I would have said without knowing that. Oftentimes I was saying before we went live that I like to factor in an annoyance fee, like how annoying this is going to be for me to do. And like what number will make me feel like it's less annoying. And then, but not even annoying. Cause I love writing. So, I'll do, how long do I think this is going to take? And I'll break it down. Like, okay, if it's going to take like, a week to do, what would I reasonably need in a week, and like break that down by like, so let's say you're working on it 4 hours. I kind of like, I'm like, okay, so per hour, how much is that going to be? Because you're, if you look at it as like they're buying your time rather than just the finished product, that's been really helpful to me. And also like, what yeah, I mean, I kind of try to look at like what the standards are for that industry, but often, I mean, really just talking to people and then you pass on the favor. That's what I was going to say, is that then you do the same thing for other people. So I have a friend who's trying to sell a book, and you know, they're of a different marginalized identity than myself. And I was like, do not let them give you any less than this. And I think that's it. Once that cycle starts within your friend group, hopefully, and you know, ideally it's normalized around the whole world, but then I think, or around, you know, it's normalized in your friend group, or it's normalized in your coworkers or your peers. I think that's super helpful.
I couldn't agree more, to soapbox on that point for a minute. I do feel very strongly too, to use the cliche, rising tide lifts all boats. I definitely feel that way with freelance writing, is that there's so many people undercutting what the market could bear because they will do it for less because they don't know any different. And so it really does help for us to share the amounts that we're earning. I was texting with a friend earlier today. She didn't even ask me. I offered the information of how much I charge writing an article for a particular company because I want her to charge at least that, if not more, so that when I go back to negotiate a raise, it doesn't seem, you know, out of the realm of possibility. And speaking of negotiating with a current client, Paulette, I'm curious, how do you go about the process of raising your rates with a client that you've been working with for an extended period of time?
Yeah, you know, first you get busy so that you don't have anything to lose. You're like, being able to afford to lose a client is a great position to be in. You know, if I'm super busy and someone comes to me, I'm like, I just add 25% on it. I'm like, maybe, and maybe not. And if not, I'm still busy, so I'm good. But with someone that I'm currently working with, I try to really bring a positive attitude with it, because as you've worked with them longer and longer, you become more valuable to them because there's a switching cost. If they go to someone new, they're going to have to train them up. They're going to have to give them make sure they get the voice and the style. So I try to just frame it as a very positive conversation where, you know, I'd love to keep working with you. I think it's great. And then, but kind of say, you know, a little bit about like, you're getting really busy, and, you know, kind of hinting a little bit that there are other offers on the table, and just saying, you know, since we have been working together for X number of months or years, I wanted to see if it's possible at this point to raise it to, you know, 10% more, something like that, and give them a solid number. And, you know, and I've asked and I've gotten a no. But it's really, I've never gotten a no. Usually they're embarrassed that they can't pay you more. It's not like, oh, you know, how dare you ask me? And if anyone makes you feel shame about asking for a raise, that is a toxic client. There's actually, in a park near me, there's a sign that says poison oak, which is like super useful. And I was like, man, people could really use signs, you know, like we have them for plants, we need them for people. Like, toxic client who doesn't want to pay you as much as you are worth. But yeah, I think just having it be as, you know, as that you really want to continue, you want to be able to continue to work for them for a long time so that they can avoid those switching costs, and indicating that in order to do so, you know, you need this rate.
Great. Well, we've talked a little bit about the bringing the money in. So now we do need to talk about the setting up of the books. And I know, Paco, that this could be entirely its own webinar. So it's a bit of a heavy lift for you to synthesize it into an answer. But could you give us an overview of kind of a basic system a freelancer needs to have set up in order to start to build their books and, you know, monitor their cash flow?
Absolutely. It would be my pleasure. And here's where I'm just going to talk endlessly. You're going to have to cut me off here. I think the very first thing that you need to do as a freelancer, somebody who's wanting to go off on their own, is set up a separate bank account. So a separate checking account and a separate savings account. Even if you don't set up like a full-on corporation, if you're just like, you know what, I'm going to be a sole proprietor for a while, you should still set up a separate account. So you want at least one checking account and one savings account. I'm going to force you to use that savings account as a tax savings account, which I think we're going to talk a little bit more about in depth later. And then you'll use that normal checking account, whether or not it's attached to a corporate name or if it's just a personal account. Anytime you get paid from a client, you dump that money into that checking account. Anytime you have any kind of business expense, you'll pay for it out of that business checking account. The other thing that I urge you to do is carve out time every week when you're first starting out to pay attention to your finances, pay attention to your business finances. Right now, I dedicate the 10th and the 25th, or the weekday closely, you know, whatever close, whatever, a weekday that falls close to those dates. And that's my weekly finance time. And basically during that time, what I do is look at my bookkeeping, make sure my transactions are all lining up. That's when I invoice clients. That's when I follow up on anything in the pipeline, anything that's outstanding. That's when I look at how much money I made and I say, okay, great. Not all these dollars are my dollars. As much as I would love for these dollars to be my dollars, I'm going to take, 30% of these dollars and dump them into my tax savings account. And then that's where I also just look at things. If there's something painful that I have to deal with, like calling Verizon and saying like, why are you screwing me? I take that time to do it as well. So ultimately really carving out the time to care, put it on your calendar, show up for it. Don't compromise 98% of the time. Like if you're on vacation, fine, be on vacation. But when you're working, unfortunately, as a freelancer, part of being a freelancer is you wear all the hats and you have all the responsibility. And in the same way that you have a writing practice where maybe you carve out the first couple hours in the morning to get it done, you really have to carve out that time for your money. I would say if you're also just starting out, you don't have a lot of complication, you can use a program like QuickBooks Self-Employed. I don't love it. It's not the best, but I'm a nerd who runs a bookkeeping agency. So I always want the nerdiest, best product. If you're dealing with multiple clients and you're paying yourself on payroll and all that stuff, you should probably jump ship and go to regular QuickBooks Online. But yeah, those are all there. The whole Intuit suite is great. Bench is another great one, especially for freelancers.
I want to dig in a little bit on the paying yourself, because you kind of alluded to like you might be paying yourself a salary, which if you're S Corp, my understanding is you got to be paying yourself a salary. I'm not a tax professional by any means, but if you're not, if you haven't reached that phase in your journey, or it doesn't make sense yet to do that, and perhaps you're LLC, sole proprietor, however you've structured your business, should you just be paying yourself a set salary every month? Is that just kind of a good practice to be getting into? And if so, how should you be structuring that?
I do it.
I started. I really
helps.
like it.
It helps with taxes. It helps with taking taxes out. And like it puts money into the tax savings account, and like it keeps me from getting shocked by having taxes taken out of my income every year.
And Paco, how would you recommend doing that?
You can approach it a few different ways. If your income is so variable in your business where some months maybe you can't really pay yourself that much, I would pay yourself based on that. There's a really nerdy book called Profit First. I really, really, really I can't recommend this book enough for small business owners or freelancers who are really trying to wrap their head around setting up an actual financial system that's strategic and not just like, oh crap, I hope that this works out. I will say when I first read that book, I was bummed. I was so bummed because it forced me to see how I was undercharging. I wasn't getting paid enough, and I had to just like blow everything up and kind of start over. But it's better to have that bummer moment like a year in, 6 months in, 3 months in, than like 7.5 years later. And you're like, what have I been doing with my life? So I'm getting away from
different. Do you do all the different bank accounts that asks for? I just do it in YNAB with budgets.
I do I do my own crazy version of Profit First.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's variable.
So the answer to the question is like, should you pay yourself regularly on salary, something fixed? If your business can afford you to pay yourself a fixed amount, go for it. Sometimes when you're first starting out, you can't. So you'll pay yourself based on what you earn. Again, I like the tax savings account because you just take 30% or 25% or whatever your accountant says to save, dump it into the tax savings account. And then you can have quarterly conversations with your accountant. Like, here's my bookkeeping, January through March 31st. Tell me what to do. And sometimes they'll say, oh, we'll run a quarterly payroll, or we'll do you'll pay into payroll right now by sending them a check, or they'll say, we can wait till the end of the year.
Well, let's just dig into taxes, because we've mentioned it a few times. I personally think it's one of the biggest pain points of being self-employed. So I'm curious to hear from each person, and we might be like, Paco might be setting all of us straight. We'll see what happens. But how do you personally handle the fact that we have to pay quarterly estimated taxes and do an annual return. And you might have additional business taxes on top of all of that as well, depending on how you structured your business. So Paulette, let's start with you. How do you handle taxes?
I get mine out of my bank account weekly. You can just pay your taxes on the government website once a week, however often you want to. And then I just know it's out there, and I'm getting, it was really funny. This was, I think, is the meditation kicking in, because my accountant told me I owe $6,000 this year. And I was like, okay, so that's fine. And then turned out the math was wrong. And so I'm getting $2,700 back. And I'm like, that is better. Thank you. And, it's better to be right on point so you don't give the government a loan, but I would much rather be getting a chunk back. But knowing me and how I am, and as with Gaby, bad with money, which we're working on it, I'm working on it. But I just know I don't want that bank account. I don't want that money in my bank account, because let's say like a new Beyonce concert gets announced and I'm like, oh, I'll find the money later. Let me just spend it now. So I just give it directly to the government. Like, here's your money. And then I am all about outsourcing. I am a great writer. I'm a great writing coach. I am terrible with money. I'm terrible with taxes and bookkeeping. And so I outsource that stuff ASAP and just double down on what I'm good at, outsource at the things that are both important and that I'm terrible at. So for me, that is bookkeeping. And I had like a bookkeeping consultant. So you don't have to go to a full service bookkeeper. You can just have someone look at what you're doing once a month and check in to make sure that you're doing it right. So that was a really nice stepping kind of level if you can't afford a full-on bookkeeper that I didn't kind of know existed.
Gaby, I want to get to you in 1 second. I have seen in the Q&A blowing up with questions about Profit First is the name of the book. Paco, do you remember the author? Because I think two different people have written a Profit First book.
Yeah, he has not to make fun of people's names, but his name is Michael Michalowicz. And I just find that amusing that his last name sounds so much like his first name, but his parents were like, yeah, we'll still name you Michael. Michael Michalowicz, I think is what it is.
Okay, so like Profit First, Michael Michalowicz.
Also a very funny and well-written financial book. He makes
a
lot.
It's great.
All right. Gaby, I would love to hear about your strategy for how you handle taxes as a freelancer.
Well, now I have a separate tax savings account. So when I get paid, I take some out and put it in my tax savings account. And then I just leave the tax savings account alone. I am terrified of taxes. I have like nightmares that the IRS is going to come and knock on my door and arrest me, and I won't know why. And so I have an accountant now who helps me, but I really ask a lot of questions. Like, he'll say, okay, it's going to be this, this, and this. And if I don't fully understand it, he's on the phone with me for 3 hours. Like, we're breaking it down. I do get embarrassed. I do cry. I do, apologize profusely the whole time, even though I know he does work for me. And he explains things like I have had different accountants, and I found one who was willing to do that with me. And that wasn't the first or second one that I looked at. So you can change accountants. They work for you. But it is painful. And I don't want to get this tax savings account is new because I don't want to get surprised anymore. It was really difficult. I went from someone who regularly had like $50 to her name to someone I paid more in taxes last year than I had entirely in my life. So it is so jarring. And that happened really fast for me in a way that then 2 years of paying taxes in a row was just crying. So it's hard. I feel like I'm here to be like, and it's hard and sad and you will cry. But the tax savings account has been super helpful, because now I'm just like, okay, at some point that money goes somewhere else.
I do want to empathize with the IRS anxiety dreams, because I actually do have those. I have never missed a filing date.
Me too.
I live in such fear of
when I get a letter from them, I'm like,
yeah.
And then usually it's nothing bad, but every time I'm like, here it is. I'm going to jail every time.
I also want to clarify, when we're saying tax savings account, we're not speaking specifically about like a particular account named tax savings account. It's a savings account that you set up to put your money aside for taxes. To share my strategy on this, every single time I get a paycheck that goes into my business checking account, like Paco said to, I put 40% of that aside into a separate savings account that I've actually nicknamed Uncle Sam's money. You can nickname most, if not all, of your bank accounts, regardless of the bank. So I find that really helpful. The reason I go high, 30% is usually the standard rule of thumb for freelancers. I go to 40% for a couple of reasons. One, I do live in New York City, so I have city, state, and federal taxes. So I got that extra little bonus one. I did one time get hit with an unanticipated LLC fee for my business that cost me, I think, $2,000 that I wasn't anticipating. So I like to have that little buffer. And on top of that, surplus money after I paid my taxes, I dump immediately into my SEP IRA, which is my retirement account that I have set up for my retirement. So I like to over save, partly out of a healthy fear of the IRS, partly out of trying to also like set myself up in different ways. That's what a tax savings account is. It's a savings account for taxes, can be set up with your business account, or I guess technically another bank if you want. Paco, do you have anything to add to our? Yeah.
So the one thing that I really liked about Profit First was that it helped you think in percentages so that each thing can grow as your business grows, right? So for me, I take 5% of my business as profit, which I just took out my first like profit and got myself like some like a massage and some fun fancies. He's like, you have to do something fun with it as a reward for being an entrepreneur and like being out on your own. And then you know how much you like, we've had this conversation, like how much do you spend on operating expenses, like your website, photos, you know, the fancy printer you want. And so for me, that's 50%, or no, I'm sorry, that's 25%. And then my take home pay is 50%, but I've put myself on a weekly paycheck. So now I can look at how much I have in that account and know, hey, I can afford my paycheck for the next 3 weeks, you know, which is really, really nice and a totally different idea, right? So if you think in percentages, it allows you to grow more than kind of numbers, I think. And you know, you can always make that, you know, hopefully as long as you keep your personal expenses low, hard. But you know, you can afford that 30% to the government or whatever, you know, 40%. You are a better woman than I in the financial realm, as we always knew. But no, it's really, really good. But yeah, I think it's fun to see how much, like, I think Gaby, when I hear your stories, is like, look at where we are now. Like, I just feel like you grow and you get better in these skills and it feels really good. You're like, oh, I feel like an actual business owner now. And so they are just skills that you can get better at. And yeah.
And I actually, on that, I do want to clarify something that I did see come up in the chat as well, is I did read, you know, a little bit in our bios, but to have everybody do just like a quick 15-second explainer of the different type of freelance writing and work that you do, so people have a better understanding of where some of our income streams are coming in from. So Gaby, if you want to kick that off.
Sure. So I do brand deals on Instagram and TikTok sometimes. And those are anything from someone buying some stories from me, someone buying a post from me. I also do podcast ads. So on, you know, buying ads for Bad with Money or buying ads for Just Between Us. And then I'm freelance writer, so I'll write articles. I also work I sell television shows, so I work in TV, and a little bit in features. And then I've, you know, sold podcasts, like scripted podcasts, and I wrote a graphic novel. And so I'm kind of like, there's one side of my income that is like selling shows and books and stuff. And then another side of my income is brand deals, if that is helpful at all.
It is. And for Paulette, what about you?
So I wake up at 5 a.m. and work on a novel for 2 hours for $0 an hour. And then I have my a very important meeting business where I run meditation and free writing sessions, which is like such a passion project. Like I get my little check every month and I'm like, oh yeah, it's a job because it's just so fun. And then I have some corporate clients. And I just posted on my blog, like I think of it in like it's compensation and desirability, right? So talking about like desirability low, compensation high, like 84 an hour and 100 an hour is what I get from my corporate clients. And then I write for Kirsten Jordan, who's like super fun, kind of has become a mentor to me. And I've learned so much from her that to me is kind of that incredible work, that like my favorite kind of corporate work. I pitch articles and write essays, which has been very low over quarantine. And I know a lot of my friends and I are like, are we even writers anymore? So I'm really having fun, like kicking back into that and really being intentional about that. And then I write courses. I have one called the Writer's Welcome Kit and one called Going Pro. And I do coaching for writers. So, and I love that mix. Like, it's really fun. You don't have to just freelance write. You have to say like, okay, how do I get my soul taken care of? Which to me can be in like my coaching clients, like I love that one-on-one. I love just like writing my novel. And then how do I get my bank account taken care of?
Yep. Paco, what about you?
I run a bookkeeping agency. We help creative businesses, production companies, marketing agencies. And I kind of just stumbled into writing because I started writing articles to promote my services. Originally, when I broke off to be on my own, I was going to be a financial planner, do financial consulting, kind of stay on the same path. Like within the first year, I had 30 clients, a full book of business. And I was like, this is horrible. Everybody's texting me. Everybody's like putting their money emotions on me. And I don't want to do this. So I saw a path to like basically, kind of do what Gaby's doing in terms of using my own creativity and creating intellectual property, writing a book, developing a television show, and thinking about how that can eventually be something that you sell for a chunk of money and then I can invest that, or thinking of that as a revenue stream. So that's how I tend to think about making money and building things.
Also share mine quickly. So I kind of more similar to Gaby, I have brand media partnership deals that I will do thanks largely to my Instagram following and Twitter. Then I also do a lot of freelance writing, which actually in 2020 was a big bulk of how I made my money because marketing budgets collapsed for a good chunk of 2020. And then I also am a 3-time author and I am in royalties on 2 of my books. So I got advances for all 3, and then I am in royalties on 2 of them. And I will also say, because I know there have been some interest for numbers, we will talk a little bit about numbers later. My writing, I charged, depending on the outlet, I have charged everywhere from $450 to $2,000 for an article, depending on how much research is happening, the frequency of posting, the ease of working with the client, kind of talking about that stress tax. If it makes sense for me to just kind of have my byline in that, because then, hey, it's cool, I can put it in my bio. But I would say on average, I'm usually charging at least $800 for an article. So for those who are asking for real numbers, we'll also be digging into those in a little bit. But I've worked my way up to that. That wasn't something that I automatically was getting, obviously, early on. I would say I was at like 150 to 200. I felt really good about those numbers about 4 years ago. Now, I just want to do one more question for me before we open it up to more audience questions. And that is, I briefly alluded to our futures and retirement accounts in an earlier conversation, but I do think it's really important for us as freelancers, as self-employed people, to recognize the importance of setting ourselves up for the future. And the fact that no one is providing us with a company 401k plan, unless maybe you still work a day job, in which case, great, you've really figured it out. But for a lot of us, that's not the situation. So I would love to know from each of you what you do to put money aside. And it's not saving for retirement, you're investing for retirement. Make sure that money is invested. How are you investing for retirement? I'll start with you, Paulette.
So I just want to relay a time that I was a young reporter and I interviewed a woman who felt like the ghost of my future. She had traveled, was super fun. She was a dancer in the Caribbean when birth control came out. She told me fun stories, and she was 100% broke. And the county had told her to just go to homeless shelter, and it scared the crap out of me. It was like super sad. It was terrible. It was during the housing crisis in 2008, and her condo which she had put everything into, was now worth much less than what she owed on it. So, I think it's similar with taxes, where it's like, it's such a scary thing to me that it's like, okay, because it is so scary, you have to be extremely intentional about it. So automatic payments, just automatically, I don't even think about it. It gets put into my retirement account. Following people, getting educated on it. Amanda Holden is a great person who teaches about taxes. She's on social media as Dumpster Doggy, hilarious, fun, will help you not be so afraid. And I think I could be doing more, honestly. Like, this is probably an area where I'm not as strong, because I keep being like, oh, I'll be doing better next year. And it's like, no, you got to start now. I did work at it right after I came home after traveling abroad for a while. I worked at a tech company, and I was like, okay, I want to pay off my student loans, and I know I want to be a writer. So I'm going to put so much money into my 401k. And so I just maxed it out for those few years. And so I got myself like a nice big push, and it's probably time to up my payments a little bit, quite frankly.
Gaby, what about you?
I have an IRA, so I put money in there, and I try to make sure to. It was very counterintuitive to me to have money that I can't touch. That like really freaked me out when I started doing that. But that was like the big step for me, where I was like, oh my God, I'm a person. Like, I've done it. And so I feel very like, I'm always so excited that I even have it. I'm like, an IRA, who am I, the queen? And so I do that. And then this year I just started doing a little bit of like stocks, like a little, because like when COVID hit, I just bought a bunch of airline stock. And so like and that to me is like a little bit of money. And every time it does well, I'm like, I'm a genius. So yeah, that's like but it took a long time, like you said, for me to realize that retirement is investing. I would have never, like, I was like, oh, I have retirement, but I don't invest. And then even like, I just told my sister, I was like, did you know your retirement is investing? And she was like, it's what now? And I was like, Erin told me that.
Well, you need to make sure it's actually invested too, and not just sitting in cash.
No, that's what she said. Yeah. She was like, oh, well, it's this. And I was like, yeah, that's investments. And she was like, wow, chill.
Right.
So like, yeah, that, I mean, I'm still scared all the time. Maybe I want to like get real estate. I don't know. I'm nervous, but that's where I'm at now.
Paco, I'm going to have you elaborate a little bit, because there was a like Roth versus traditional question. I know I did say SEP IRA already. So if you could also do like a quick, here's your options. It's not just that Roth v traditional IRA.
Yeah, so let's start with the traditional ones. The 401k is normally a retirement plan that's offered to you by an employer. If they are virtuous and kind and give any craps about you, they will oftentimes allow you to participate in a 401k plan. For those of us who are not within traditional retirement bounds, the first flavor you're probably going to reach for is something called the IRA, the traditional individual retirement account. That you're going to go ahead and put pre-tax dollars into the IRA. The Roth IRA is different because you're putting money that you've already paid taxes on into the Roth IRA. And the difference is like real snoozy and real granular. It's when you pay taxes. So with the Roth IRA, since you paid taxes already on the money that you're putting in there, when you pull it out, you don't have to pay taxes. With the traditional IRA, you put money in there, it grows, and you don't pay taxes, but when you start to withdraw, you pay taxes. Do we want to know why that's important? Probably. Yeah. Should we dig into that?
I do that, and just the fact that we also have like SEP, like the contribution limits.
Okay, so the strategy between Roth versus traditional is predicting the future, basically. So the reason why you would do a Roth is because you think, I'm going to be so money bags when I'm old and cute and gray that I don't want to pay taxes on all of the retirement money that I'll be withdrawing. That's that kind of strategy. The other side of that coin is, well, you have no idea if you're going to be future money bags. You have no idea what the future tax code is going to look like. So just put it into a traditional IRA. Truthfully, at the end of the day, I don't give a crap which one you choose. Just put money away, please. And then so that brings us to the SEP IRA, which stands for Self-Employed Pension Individual Retirement Account, if I'm not mistaken. And people who are self-employed can open up a SEP IRA. You do have to pay yourself, and you can only make a contribution based on how much you've paid yourself. So that is a little bit complicated. If you're interested in a SEP IRA, please talk to your accountant about it. See if you're eligible, see how much you can put into there. But the reason why people choose a SEP IRA because the contribution limits are crazy. So let's compare a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA. I believe the 2021 contribution limit is $6,000. So the most you can jam into that account in 1 year is $6,000. And then compare that with a SEP IRA, which is, I think, 58,000, something like that, something crazy. You can jam 58,000 G's into that in 1 year, and any dollar after that, you're going to be hitting the limit. So that's really the big difference, is the contribution limits. And then again, these like really granular crap about how much you have to earn and all that stuff. But your accountant can definitely guide you on that.
Well, thank you, Paco. And one of the big questions that came in, this was a pre-submitted question, but I know there's also been calls for actual numbers in the chat. And I really liked the breakdown of, somebody asked for real numbers, but more specifically, does experience matter, or is this just about quality? So Paulette, I want you to start with that question.
Yeah, so I think that more than experience, I mean, it's interesting because to me, experience and quality are so linked, right? Where the quality isn't going to be as good, especially the quality of working with you. You know, you're not just selling a piece of writing, you're selling the experience of working with you. So people have to know, like, and trust you. You have to learn how to not be flaky, how to follow up, how to not be emailing people and be like, hey, would you send me that link again that you had? Which for me was like a long learning curve. A lot of classes on LinkedIn Learning. And also how to do sales and things like that. So really it's a service business as well. One of my favorite stories is that after my FOF fund came out, I was up at a retreat with Erin and some other financial geniuses who convinced me to double my rates. And I was like, double what? And I was charging $50 an hour at the time. And I came back and started charging $100 and getting it. And I was like, what? This is crazy. So, you know, but at that point I had been doing this. I've been doing this since middle school yearbook, you know, like I've been doing this a long time. I have a lot of practice, and, you know, your quality, I think educating yourself and taking the time out for, to be educating yourself, to be reading books about how to do it, taking classes, pushing yourself. That's how you kind of, that's how you ramp up your quality without having to let the years go by, right? So you can get to those higher levels faster if you're reading books, not only about writing, but about business as well.
What about you, Gaby?
I think it comes from, I think like it's what Paulette said, where it comes from the professionalism of having the experience. And I kind of think that shows in your rates, the way that Paco was talking about, where I think they could, I'm guessing, but I think when I first started out, they could tell that I didn't have a lot of experience in the business because I was offering for, I was asking for like half of what other people who had maybe like 100,000 less followers than me or whatever were asking for, that I didn't find out about till later when I started actually asking people. But I think I don't think you should undersell yourself just because, or like say a lower price just because you're new. Like, you know, like Paulette said, she probably could have been charging 100 the whole time. No, you could have.
I mean, no, that's what I'm mad about, that I could have. And like,
yeah.
Like, so start high. Like,
yeah,
they'll take you down if they need to, but like,
yeah, that's true. This is the thing that I think about it. Like, people always get so nervous that, and I used to think this too, that they'll rescind the offer, or that they'll like be like, never, they're not just going to be like, never mind. They'll be like, oh, what about this number? And then you go, okay. I think a lot of this stuff comes down to, honestly, like in my research and experience, is just people not liking conflict. Just people not liking any sort of conflict, any sort of awkwardness, asking for anything, like any sort of embarrassment, where like, you know, I've had friends be like, well, don't you think they'll think this about you? And I was like, I don't really, so what? Okay, they thought I asked for a high number and then it was a lower number. Like, then they went home and saw their wife and moved on. Like, and I think that's something that I feel like should be stressed. Even, you know, it's easy to sit here and say, ask for this, ask for that. But like, the real root of it is that you just can't handle any sort of conflict.
Well, I also just want to get to the point on talking about numbers specifically. What can make it hard is that different people are in different places, different things get valued. So for instance, if I'm charging $2,000 for a 1,000-word article, for instance, if I'm getting $2 a word, there's also usually a somewhere in the contract and ask that I share on Instagram, that I share on social, like on Twitter, that they're also then leveraging my following, which can help move price points up. So that is one thing that you also can have at your disposal, depending on what you're trying to negotiate. But the other thing too, is I talk to other self-employed people and freelancers a lot about what they charge. And one of the questions that came in was, have you ever run into a situation where a colleague tried to make it awkward that you politely asked how much they made? So I do want to talk about, like, have you had that experience? And if so, how do you now ask people how much they make? Which, by the way, is a whole section of Broke Millennial Talks Money. Gonna plug my book right here, is how to ask people how much they make. So let me hear from Paco first. Have you had this experience, and how would you recommend asking someone, hey, how much do you make?
I don't think I'm the right person to ask for this, because I come from a financial planning background where I could walk up, like I'll be at a cocktail party and I could, tell people what I do. They're gonna 9 times out of 10 ask me a finance question. And like 7 o'clock on a Friday night with a Manhattan in my hand in a room full of strangers, I can legitimately say, how much money do you make? No one's gonna bat an eye. No one's gonna say anything. So I feel like I've got a little bit of a pass that maybe other people don't, given my experience and the fact that I can go on a 5-minute rant about a SEP IRA,
What about you, Paulette? How do you handle this, and how do you handle asking?
Yeah, I feel like people, we've so been trained that like it's not okay to talk about it. And so I think, allowing them the opening without kind of demanding it, just being like, oh, how much do you think I should ask them for? Is kind of a question that means, how much did they pay you? But it allows them to be like, oh, I'm not sure. Like, what, it gives them a kind of an out, but also an opportunity to say how much they made without saying, well, this is how much I made. So that phrasing has really worked well for me.
What about you, Gaby?
I was just thinking about, we had a firestorm because when I worked at BuzzFeed, we all went out to dinner and then everyone just started saying what their salary was, and we were all a little drunk and it was a mess. A total it really got into it with people. And I mean during that dinner I found out that this male colleague of mine was making $25,000 more than me, and we literally sat next to each other and had the same job. And I was like, that was hard. That was really hard to figure out. And I went and asked about it, and the boss was like, sorry. The boss said that's what he asked for when we hired him. And owie, ouch, 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 ouch. So yeah, that was super awkward. and that the boss's reaction was basically like, tough cookies, you should have asked for that when you got here, which is a bad boss reaction.
It is, and there's no way to know how much the market would bear, how much you should be asking for, without asking other people how much they charge. And to me, one of the best strategies is kind of very similar to Paulette's. I love the over-under strategy as well, which is, could you tell me, would you charge over or under $2,000 for this article? Anything like that, where it kind of gets in the ballpark. Or just asking directly and giving context. Context is really important. Hey, I was just approached by this media outlet. I saw that you have written for them before. I'm curious, one, what your experience was like with the process, how they were as a client, and two, could you give me a ballpark on your rate so I know what I should be asking for? And that's just kind of a gentle way to initiate the conversation. And if they don't want to answer that part, they don't have to, but definitely ask around to try to get that information for yourself too. Now, we did talk very much in the beginning about the experience of getting ghosted or of somebody taking forever to pay. So I am curious, for those of you who have had this experience, you sign a deal, you're really excited about a story, it gets killed. I'm sure we've all had it happen. Do you have a kill fee in your contract? If so, how did you negotiate that? And what about late fees? Have you ever successfully negotiated that? So Gaby, I saw you nodding emphatically, so we'll start with you.
Oh, not about late fees, but just that I always have a kill fee. But the kill fee is like never as high as the actual fee. But it is nice to have. But yeah, I've never negotiated a late fee, but a kill fee is to me like non-negotiable.
And how much would you ask for, or have you seen actually get through on a contract for a kill fee?
like 1/4 of the money. You know what I mean? Like but it's just the principle of it, I think, for me, because you did the work. But yeah, I'm like thinking about things where it was like a, I don't know, it would be like a $2,000 article, and the kill fee would be like 200. I don't know, like very minimal. But it just makes me feel like the principle is there.
And to explain what a kill fee is, because I did see that come up. So basically what that means is you have signed a contract to do this work, and they'll say like, hey, we can pull it. Or you've agreed upon it via email. And a kill fee is the amount that they have to pay you if they decide not to use the story or run with the story. So I have seen contracts more so with like very big media outlets like a New York Times, where they actually already have written into the contract, like, hey, we'll pay you a kill fee of 25%. And sometimes kill fees change depending on how much work you've done. So if it gets killed early, it's going to be less. If you got further along, it might be a little more, but I've never seen anything over, I think, 30%. What about you, Paulette?
I just want to tell my best kill fee story. You know when procrastination pays off? I hadn't done anything for this $2,000 story, and the editor called me and she's like, hey, I'm really sorry, we have to cut this. And I was like, oh yes, like I was really weighing on me. And she's like, well, we'll give you a kill fee of 1,000. And I was like, I was actually out to lunch with some other freelancers, and I was like, ladies, lunch is on me. That was a miracle. I am not, my strong suit is not contracts for sure. Wu Dan Yan is one writer who is, she's the pit bull. She is great about all that. So she's someone that people can really learn from. But yeah, if you're doing work, and this is another thing where like kind of getting work in installments can really help, where you get a certain amount to start, and then if they want to cut it later, that's good. But or that's not good, but at least you have that first payment. But yeah, I would definitely say if you're going to take on work to negotiate a kill fee for sure. And yeah, it is like this little kind of womp womp, all right, here's your electric bill or whatever. But at least it's something, and it will, I think places won't go around just kind of willy-nilly assigning things if they know they're going to have to pay a kill fee.
So final question, and this I'm just going to riff a little bit. The question was originally around a volatile author that I assume this person works for, but I'm just going to expand that to any sort of demanding, overbearing client, whether it's an editor, whether it's somebody that you do ghostwriting for, or what have you. How do you take control back or set healthy boundaries with somebody and try not to be taken advantage of in your career, especially because like sometimes we just need that paycheck? I'm sure, Paco, you must have also had experience with having to set healthy boundaries with your clients. So you want to kick us off?
I mean, I think that the very first interaction that you have with someone really sets the tone. And every interaction that you have with anyone is showing them what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept. And for me, I grew up in a household with addiction, so I know that I have boundary issues. And, even today, I have to take a pause and think about whether or not I'm trying to be helpful, or if I'm just falling into these old patterns of like, okay, let me try to make you comfortable because I don't know how you're going to react. So it's for sure an evolving process and something that, you have to be really conscious of. It's taken me a really long time to learn how to stand up for myself and just be direct and also kind. I think you can be direct and kind, and that's probably the best way to manage an outcome with a volatile personality.
What about you, Gaby?
Oh, I don't know. I think that's where that annoyance fee comes in. We're kind of like, how annoying is this going to be for me to do? Yeah, I mean, I used to just take it. I mean, I also come from a house with addiction, and like, yeah, I used to not be able to stand up for myself, and I also used to, but now it's like, okay, if you don't, then I think people are a lot more willing to work with you than you imagine. Because here's something that happens that I see a lot is that people will have the one-sided conversation in their heads without ever actually talking to the person. So they'll be like, well, here, I had the whole conversation in my head and they said no. And it's like, you didn't even ask them. You just played it out in your mind and then like decided you were defeated. And so sometimes when I've done that and then I've actually gone and asked the person rather than just like been like, it's not going to do anything. It's had a different outcome than I played out in my mind.
And how about you, Paulette?
Well, thank you, Paco and Gaby, for sharing that, because I think what I love about this business is that it's a very human business, right? The reason I don't want to work for a corporation is because I like to be a human being. And we are all going to bring our personalities to this business. So for me, I started out with a document that's called Working with Paulette. It has all my information they're going to ask me for, my UBI number, my bank routing number and my address and all of that. And then it has my hours. It has my response time to email, and my 20% fee for rush and weekend work, which is at my discretion to choose. And I actually am at a place now where I have some freelancers working for me, and I say like, hey, what are your days off? Oh, anytime. I'll work anytime, And to me, that's just, I'm like, no, like you will not work anytime. Like you need to take time for yourself. And so it's a real show of self-respect to set boundaries with clients. And what I like to do is to just focus on a positive outcome that you want. Like, hey, I love writing for you and I love doing this. And I'm going to bring my full self to work every day from 8 to 5. But in order to do that, I really have to take my evenings off. So could you keep texts from between 8 and 5? One thing that really helped me with this was I helped Nir Eyal on a book called Indistractable, right? About all these things that are pinging our distraction or our focus nonstop, all these distractions. And so really taking control of that. And if someone, and that's why it's so important to have backup, not only financial backup, if you don't have that, but backup as far as your network, right? Where like, for example, when quarantine started, I lost all my work. I had one tweet because I've been building this network, 11 people retweeted it. My calendar was full again, right? To know because you are networking with your colleagues and your peers and getting yourself out there and marketing your services that you can replace that client if they are abusive, because you should never have to put up with that. And I think we feel like, well, if I'm writing, like at least I'm writing. It's like, no, like your client should not yell at you, make you cry, call you names, call you at 10 p.m., anything like that. Like you are professional and you need to be treated like one or you're out the door.
I love that. That's such a wonderful note to end on. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you to all of these lovely professionals for being on this call with us this evening. We so appreciated your insight and your wisdom. For everyone tuning in, there will be a follow-up email. Everybody's details will be shared, but if quickly each person just wants to do a little, here's where I am, here's how to reach me. Gaby, if you want to start that.
Yeah, I'm Gaby Dunn. I'm on Instagram at Gaby Road, GabyRoad. The Bad with Money podcast is out now. The 7th season has started, and so episode 3 came out today. So go listen to the Bad with Money podcast, and I have the Bad with Money book, which is available. But you could just go to my website, GabyDunn.com, and that has where you can buy the book and everything.
Great. Paco.
You can find me at thehellyeahgroup.com. Every Wednesday, I put out a weekly newsletter called the Nerd Letter, and I will shout at you about all the things I'm doing and send you wonderful links every Wednesday.
Love it. And Paulette.
I'm on Twitter at Paulette Perhach, Instagram at Paulette J Perhach for some reason. I'm blogging about all of this jazz at welcometotherwriterslife.com. And if you need some accountability and some focus, you can write with me every morning at 7 a.m. Pacific, sans makeup, at a very important meeting.com.
Well, great. And thank you all so much. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.